What's up guys, Loom here. Welcome back to the channel and thanks for tuning in. Today we have Frost Death Knight versus Zekvir Hardmode. Death Knight has some unique strengths and its own share of weaknesses on this fight. First weakness that becomes immediately obvious at any gear level is the inability to dispel or deal with every enfeebled spittle, even if you have Bran using his dispel on cooldown. In addition to that, I found damage on the cocoon to be rather demanding. Losing even a few seconds of uptime or not having Reaper's Mark available typically meant I had to finish off a live ad. That said, Death Knight is absolutely the tankiest DPS in this fight. Death Knights get 3% crit suppression from a class talent called Runic Protection, and this prevents the boss from critically striking you with a melee attack. So goodbye 3.5 million damage. Melee attacks that come out of nowhere and end your run, or put you in a situation where you have to use buttons you would otherwise be saving for future situations. On top of that, Death Knight can actually just tank the dot at full duration, which is only 12 seconds thanks to a class talent and Null Magic. On top of floor potions that you're not really using for melee attacks in general, you'll have to death strike a bit, and if you're running out of melee to avoid a stomp with the dot still on you, you can definitely die. But it's infinitely more possible than other classes while also not using any big cooldowns. And that's not to dismiss the rest of the class tree. In fact, I think every talent on there affects the fight in some way, versus say like Paladin where you're just buffing freedom and your horse. The talents are linked in the description below, as is the Zekvir playlist, which is now 10 videos long. You'll also see the subscribe button on the way down there. It's a fantastic way to support the channel and is entirely free. You can also go a step further and become a channel member for only $1 a month. Thanks so much to all the viewers, subscribers, and members. These videos would certainly be worse without your support and encouragement. One complaint: Wraith Walk, breaking roots but not snares, is lame. Historically, Death Knight has had reduction to movement speed impairment effects, and currently these are baked into Death's Advance and Wraith Walk. This reeks of PvP influence, so I hope the PvPers are happy with themselves. What's that? They're not? Oh. As usual, we're enchanting movement speed to cloak, bracers, and boots, and using an elusive blasphemite with 5 different colored gems for an additional 10% movement speed. This isn't shown on your character sheet, but it is there. I use an add-on called Sin Stats, which I've also linked in the description below, to see stuff like that. You can also track a bunch of other stuff, check it out. So, Enfeebled Spittle. Anti-Magic Shell, or AMS, will prevent the dot's application, of course. There's also a talent that allows AMS to function as a dispel, but it increases the cooldown by an additional 20 seconds. I went back and forth on this, but ultimately decided to go without the dispel version, as AMS can be used on additional mechanics and isn't even required to survive the dot, though if it's available and the dot's going out, I would use it. If you're finding it hard to have AMS before the dot goes off, take the dispel option, moving that point out of Vestigial Shell. If you don't have the Dispel talent and you AMS after the spittle goes on you, it'll get eaten up in about 3 seconds, and you're going to be death striking, floor potioning, and otherwise using other cooldowns to survive the situation. And anytime you are using AMS, it's good practice to use it as late as possible. The duration is short, but long enough to occasionally cover a phase 1 stomp and a spittle in either order. Speaking of the Fear Stomp in phase 1, you can kind of just tank that with your natural health pool, and Lichborn can be used to prevent or break the fear effect. If you're eating a phase 1 stomp, I would prioritize using Lichborn for the fear break, as AMS is used for everything else. And really, you're only eating a phase 1 stomp if you need to maintain uptime on a cocoon in order to finish it off. The phase 2 stomp does way more damage, so don't eat that one. Given the boss isn't likely to melee you to death, you can be a little quicker on interrupting his heal cast in order to reposition the boss. Keeping the boss in the middle of the room is, of course, still one of the more important aspects, and this is mostly so that you can keep him close to you while you run to any point in the room. Keeping the boss close by is the easiest way to deal with the frontal cone, so ideally you're dragging the boss over to every ad that is on the perimeter and then quickly moving him back over. I did mention trouble I had with the cocoon. You absolutely want to have Reaper's Mark for it, and typically I'm always keeping Pillar of Frost or Frost Scythe or Frostworm's Fury for that next ad spawn. If you see me send those at any other time, it's usually finishing up an ad that I didn't manage to kill while the cooldown came back up, or I'm confident that I can use it for boss damage. This mostly only happens on the pole. Keeping uptime on the cocoon is super important, as is having Reaper's Mark for every single one. And if you're still lacking damage at that point, I would stop using Remorseless Winter and even consider not putting down a Death and Decay. Not only do those cost runes that could instead be an Obliterate, but Obliterate can also generate a rune and even refund its own rune cost. Looking back, I likely would have killed the boss quicker if I had stopped using these. Just don't cast Remorseless Winter at all, and decide for yourself whether or not you want to save the global or the rune spent from dropping Death and Decay. Especially considering that the boss might not even be within the cleave distance of Death and Decay for a portion or even most of the uptime of the buff. Horn of Winter is great. Don't use it on CD. Save it for when you're DPSing an ad and you need more runes. Now, if we let an ad spawn out of the cocoon, we do have a good number of abilities we can use to take care of it before ultimately having to tank or line of sight a web blast. First thing you do is asphyxiate. Stun the ad at the end of his first web cast. This stuns for 6 seconds. If he's still alive at that point, chain death grips at the end of his casts if you think you can finish him off within 2 grips. And if not, get yourself to a doorway to use it as line of sight for that web blast. And if you're not going to be able to stop the cast before the ad dies, you can use Icebound Fortitude, which will let you survive and prevent the stun. Icebound Fortitude and Lichborn are really helpful when you're dealing with a spittle that you can't dispel or have brand dispel, but their CC prevention makes them viable solutions to those other problems. You're very unlikely to need Icebound Fortitude for anything other than spittle or web blast. That's all I got for DK. The rest of the talent tree explains itself, and you have the remaining 28 minutes it took me to kill this guy to glean further insight. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope this has been helpful. Please subscribe to the channel or even consider becoming a member for only $1 a month. I hope the end of the year treats you well, and I hope you have a great rest of your day or evening. Peace.